So today we're discussing requirement elicitation and collaboration, right? Now, I should preface by saying this is one of the most important things a business analyst will do. And you start wondering, there are so many important things, right? But the thing is, there are so many important aspects of business analysis. Good. Many of those things you may not be responsible for, you may not do, right? So you may not be involved in strategy analysis. Planning phase may have already been done, or you will just take a small part of it, depending on the stage your organization is in their software development lifecycle. But requirement elicitation is something you would, and collaboration with stakeholders, right? It's something you would continually do. It's something that you will do. Even if they have collected requirements, you may need to you may have further questions. You may need to further clarify those requirements, right? So requirement elicitation is a must. You will do this one, right? Okay, so please pay attention, special attention to requirement elicitation and the things we'll be discussing going forward. You'll definitely do this one. So let's start where the story always starts. Definition. What is requirement? A requirement is a condition or capability needed by a stakeholder to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Bottom line, a requirement is a capability needed by a stakeholder. So someone must need something for there to be a requirement. A requirement is a condition. So it may also be a condition that a stakeholder feels must be met. Right? So requirement can represent a need or a condition that a stakeholder feels must be met to solve a specific problem they have or achieve an objective they are pursuing. Now, where those requirements come from? We already talked about in the strategy phase or in the conception phase where strategy analysis happens. You define the business need, right? We define the business need, and I further broke down those needs into the problem and the goal and objective that the organization now has because of that problem. And I said, you continue to refine these goals till it becomes objective, and you continue to refine the objective until you bring out a requirement for the business from it. So your requirement comes from the business problem or the problem statement. Requirements proceed from the problem an organization is trying to solve, or the objective they are trying to achieve. Okay. So in a nutshell, it's the business need that gives birth to your requirement. There are different types of requirements, right? So like I'm saying, the business need, all the problem statements you wrote will give birth to the business requirement. It's from this business need, from the goal and objectives, you get the business requirement. From that business requirement, you get stakeholder requirements. And from your stakeholder requirements, you get the solution requirement. Now, there are two types of solution requirements: functional and non-functional requirement. Now, there is a special type of requirement which is not from, to some extent, is indirectly from this requirement. It's indirectly from all these requirements, but it's not directly part of them. So we'll talk about each of these types of requirements in details today. So let's start from business requirements. Your business requirement, remember I said business need has the problem and the goals and objective. So you see, your business requirement is a statement of goals and objectives and outcomes that describe why a change has been initiated. So your business requirement is essentially a refined form of that business need, right? Stating the goals clearly and the objectives and why. So the problem, why this change has been initiated. So they can apply to an entire enterprise, to a business area, or to a specific initiative. So it may be just targeting a specific product. It may be for an entire department. It may be for an entire business area. Right. Regardless, as long as you are discussing the high level requirements, the requirement of the business in general, right? Not the requirement of any specific stakeholder or targeting the solution, then it's the business requirement. As long as you are deriving it from the business need, then it's a business requirement. So your business requirement will represent your highest level of requirement. Again, this is giving birth to during strategy analysis, right? So as you continue to refine your business need, you get your business requirement. Now, an example will be something like this. We need online presence to help us service customers worldwide. So that means you imagine in your business need, you would have said something like, this particular problem is affecting our business, and then you now say a solution will be improvement in our reach, right? So you have now refined that solution to, to improve our reach. What we need is improved or increased online presence to better service our customers worldwide. So from that goal and objective, you have further refined it, further clarified it to come up with a business requirement. From your business requirement, you generate, generate is the wrong word here because it may mislead you. Well, from your business requirement, during planning phase, you identify the relevant stakeholders, right? You're identifying relevant stakeholders because you want to go and meet them and ask them questions about what they will need in line with that business requirement. So an example is, okay, in this business requirement, we have said we need online presence to help us service our customers worldwide. Now, the business, right? So let's say the business is Walmart. Walmart needs online presence to help them service their customers worldwide. But Walmart has several departments. They may have the clothing department. They may have toys department, right? So, and all these departments, maybe they have their department heads, HOD, head of department. This one has his own HOD. Let's assume these people are our stakeholders, the HODs, right? So you as a business analyst, you have spoken to the leaders and you have gotten their business need. You now go to the different stakeholders. Okay, we want to put Walmart online. We want to create a website for Walmart. What would you need? Your different departments, what would you need to put for us to put online? Right. So the different departments or the different stakeholders will now start telling you their needs. That's your stakeholder requirement. They will tell you their needs based on the business requirement. That is, the needs of these stakeholders must align, must be constrained or bounded by the business requirement. So if business requirement is talking about online presence or websites, right? We want a website, or we want to improve our online presence, for example. Website is a solution. So you try not to talk about any specific solution here, even though you have refined it. We just know we want an online presence. The stakeholders cannot start talking about we want Ferrari or we want musical instrument or something that does not align with the business need. So you take this business need and you now have a meeting with stakeholders and say, based on the organization's goal of increasing their online presence, what would you need? What would your department need? And then people start talking, okay, my department is finance. We need somewhere to share financial data, report, yearly report, annual report, blah, blah, blah. My department is clothing. We need these kinds of our clothes change seasonally. So we need a platform that can allow us to upload the latest pictures from and order and manage what's it called? Our stock. The toys department may say something else, right? So you start getting everybody, all the stakeholders' requirements. That's why you identify them during planning. Those requirements must be in line, must proceed from the business requirement. I use proceed carefully here. So you don't think because we have a business requirement, we'll just come up with stakeholder requirements from the business requirement. No, you now go to the stakeholders to meet with them and say, based on this organizational requirement, based on this business requirement, what would you need? So if you have 150 stakeholders, you have to gather all their requirements. Okay. So continuing with the example of online presence, right? These stakeholders may now say, oh, we need to showcase our department's offerings online. So each stakeholder may have different offerings, different products or services they are offering, and they want to showcase those offerings online. So you have you have moved from business requirement to stakeholder requirement. Another type of requirement is your solution requirement. And like we saw, there are two types of solution requirement. But first, your solution requirement describe the capabilities and qualities of a solution that meets stakeholder requirements. So your solution requirement will describe qualities of a solution, capabilities of a solution that will meet the stakeholder requirement. Now remember, you got the stakeholder requirement from, again, carefully using this from, but from the business requirement, like guided by the business requirement. The stakeholders have told you what they want. Now, from that stakeholder requirement, you now work with developers to come up with likely solutions that will meet the stakeholder requirement. Right, so you're consulting developers, you're also consulting the stakeholders themselves to understand their requirement and to understand how to meet their requirements. The example of the Walmart example, or shopping store example, the clothing department needs to put clothes online. The toy department needs to put toys online. Their requirements may be different, right? So they have different offerings. What they require from your website may be different. And you need to understand, okay, those specifics of their requirements. Okay. And sometimes you may not have all the technical knowledge about maybe web development in this case. So you will need to consult with the developers to say, okay, what exactly is available, given that the stakeholder wants this type of solution. The stakeholder wants the clothes to be changing color or to be flipping. Is that something we can do? So those are the things you would use to come up with solution requirement. The capabilities and qualities of a solution that meets the stakeholder requirement. But your main point of contact here, of course, is still the stakeholders that gave you the requirement. Right. So in this case, you are collecting in the stakeholder requirement phase, you are getting statements of what they need. Here you are clarifying it, focusing on how the solution should look like based on what they have told you. Right. So what are the features the solution should have? What are the capabilities solution to have based on those needs you have documented, the stakeholder requirements you have documented. Right. Now, like I mentioned, there are two parts to, or two types of solution requirements. You have the functional requirements and you have the non-functional requirement. Before I get into this, depending on the environment you're working, you find in some organizations will say, oh, go and write the business requirement for this. They already have the functional requirement. They already know what they want to do, right? Or the feature they want to release, but they need to justify it. So they'll say, go and write the business requirement. The business requirement is what helps you justify why, right? That's why you see this word here, describe why a change has been initiated, right? So that thing from your problem statement that you wrote, right? And you have now refined, you have to come and explain why. So your business, they will say, go and help us write the business requirement, justifying why we need this feature. It's like someone is talking. Okay. Okay. So solution requirement, two types, functional and non-functional. The functional requirements of a solution describe the capabilities that the solution must have. So what the solution should do, essentially. That's what your functional requirement is describing. Capabilities that solution must have in terms of its behavior and information that the solution will manage. So what the solution should do. In fact, I should say what the solution's features will be. So what the solution's features will be, what the solution should do. So I'll put solutions slash features. Feature. So what a solution should do is your functional requirement, or what a feature should do is your functional requirement. Now, non-functional requirement, these do not relate directly to the behavior or functionality of a solution, but rather describe conditions under which a solution must remain effective or qualities a solution must have. In summary, how a solution or feature should behave. Or be implemented. Functional requirements talk about what, non-functional requirements talk about how. So how the what should happen. Okay. Now, these two requirements are the most popular types of requirements. So when people are talking about requirements in interviews or reward scenarios, some people only know two types of requirement, functional and non-functional requirement. You see all these things about solution requirement, stakeholder requirement, business requirement. Some people in the industry, senior BAs, don't even know any of those things. They just know that they are functional and non-functional requirements, and you should know those. So like them, you should know all that. But what gives you even more leverage now is that you know where all these come from, right? You know that your business need leads to your business requirement. From business requirements, you work with stakeholders to get stakeholder requirements. And from that, you work with your stakeholders again to try to translate that requirement into solution specifications or solution requirements. Those solution requirements can be of two types: functional and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements will talk about what the solution's features will be, or what the solution should do, or feature should do. Non-functional requirements will talk about how the solution should do it, or the feature should do it. Okay, or how it should be implemented. So let's continue with the example of website. So functional requirements will be the website will have a home page. Non-functional is talking about how the home page should load. The home page should load within 15 seconds or 1.5 seconds, right? So you see, this is talking about what it should have. This is talking about how that thing should behave. That feature or that feature or home page should load within 1.5 seconds. So that's a non-functional requirement. This is a typical expectation or even question that would arise in many interviews. Oh, do you know how to write functional requirements, or do you know what functional requirements are? Right. So another example, the website will store customer data. So what the website will do. Customer data will be encrypted to level 4 encryption standards. How? It will store it. This is how it will store it. Level 4 encryption standard. Website customers can log into their accounts, right? How? The website has the capacity for 5,000 logged in users at any one time. So this is how the website will behave regarding logged in users. Only 5,000 at a time. The website will always be available to customers. How? The website must have 99.7% uptime. Okay. Now, these two requirements usually go hand in hand. They go together. If you are using an agile approach, so if your organization is agile, or even the hybrid approach, which mixes agile and waterfall, right? And you are using user stories and acceptance criteria, many times your user story will contain the functional requirement, and you find that your acceptance criteria talks about the non-functional requirement. So functional requirement, the stuff, the home page should have a button, and when they click it, it should load this and that. Non-functional requirement, and the button should, given that this is when the user clicks the button, it should load within 5 seconds, right? So when an event occurs, this action should take place. So because if you have a functional requirement, or if you collect functional requirement without understanding how the stakeholder wants that feature or solution to behave, then you haven't fully collected requirement. There is a huge likelihood that you will disappoint the stakeholder. You will not meet their requirement, right? So your requirement is not complete most times if it doesn't have both sides. Right? So as they are giving you functional requirement, remember that there should be non-functional requirement. So how do you want this thing to be? How do you want it to behave? Right? When they are telling you what they want, you'll be asking questions about how. Okay, so you want a button. How should the button behave? Right? So questions clarifying how. How should it look? Should it be round? Should it be curved? Those kind of things. They are the non-functional requirement. Functional requirement. Customers can access the website on their phones. Non-functional requirement. The website will be compatible with iOS 12.8 and above. So specifically telling us how they'll be able to access it on their phones, right? Because it's compatible with iOS 8 and above. So these two form your solution requirement. Now, this is an example I love to share. It's a story of a lady. This young lady here. She has described what she wants to this fellow, Jimmy. Jimmy is the BA. But he only took the functional requirement. And in his mind, she wants to go out and she wants him to create something that has 4 wheels and that moves. But you see, there were other requirements in her mind which she did not share. Number one, on time. The 4 wheels, you should bring the product on time. It should look good, right? The product should look good. It should not be falling apart. And it should be available to her whenever she needs it. So availability. Right. So, but he just collected functional requirements and went to create this product, which is this, what he thought she wants. She wants 4 wheels and that it moves. He didn't collect non-functional requirements and obviously ended up missing the whole, boggling the whole thing. Right. So there has to be that balance. As you're collecting functional requirements, you should know that there will be non-functional requirements. There has to be description for how those features should behave. Right? Now, there's another shortcut to determining non-functional requirement, though the shortest cut is to just know that it describes how, right? How features and solutions should behave. But another shortcut will be remembering that non-functional requirements will talk about scalability, availability, appearance of features and solutions. So scalability, meaning how many people can use it, for example, right? Or how many resources you can distribute that solution to. So if a solution is only working on 1 computer, right? If you increase the number of computers, like, can you distribute that solution to 5 computers and it will work? That's scalability. Or if it's only 50 people using that solution right now, if we increase the demand on the solution, maybe to 5,000 people or 50,000 people, will the solution be able to cope? Then it's scalable. Availability, also in line. Is the solution available when we want to use it? Will it work? Will it always work when we want to use it, right? Or will it fail sometimes? Right? So those are non-functional requirements. They are not a feature, a thing that you can build, like a button you can see, for example, right? But they have to be considered. Security is another one, right? Is it secure? Right. So how are you securing it? How? Is it using a particular encryption standard? Yeah. So those are ways people can remember, and people usually remember non-functional requirements too, right? But generally, just looking at it broadly as the how features should behave, how a solution should behave, right, would cover all that. Then you have transition requirements. This is one people forget a lot. Transition requirements, they essentially describe temporary requirements. So requirements to facilitate transition from current state to future state, but that will not be needed once that transition is complete. That's transition requirement. So any requirement that you need to move from your current state to the future state, but that won't be needed after you have gotten the future state, is a transition requirement. Example, maybe you have built a new solution, you need to train the people that will use it. That's transition requirement. So you are training them so that they can move from their current state to the future state, which is where they are using the solution, right? So once they start using the solution, you don't need to train them on how to use it again. So that requirement is transition. The training requirement is a transition requirement. Sometimes it may be data conversion, right? Where you have developed a new solution. The previous solution had data stored in a particular way, right? And now you need to convert that data to a format or to the specifications of the new solution, right? So that's a transition requirement. It may be requirements you need for business continuity. Maybe your new solution requires this very big resource, this very big equipment. But in the interim, maybe that resource has to be ordered and it will take 7 months, it will take a year for them to manufacture it to your specification and send it. In the interim, you may say, okay, we need this other smaller resource for now that is bigger than what we currently have, but it's not as big as what we want, so that we can use it. There have been, I remember institutions where institutions that maybe they are building a permanent site. They'll say, okay, this permanent site will take us a long time, so let's use something temporary for now so that we can continue our business continue our business until the permanent site is ready. So maybe a tent, a temporary structure. So that tent then becomes a transition requirement. So requirements that facilitate transition from current state to future state, but that are not needed once the change is complete. Now, let's look at an example of transition requirement. Let's assume there's a house owner, right? A lady. She has this big house. She has come into money. So she bought a big house, a big car. And she's saying everything she owns, every of their properties, she doesn't want the old one anymore. She wants bigger things now, better, bigger. And she's the owner of this goldfish, right? And so we know that the goldfish can fly. So it's a flying goldfish. This is the current state. So she has decided that she wants the goldfish to move into a bigger bowl. So this is the current state. This is the future state. To your mind, what is the transition requirement? Or what are the transition requirements here now? Say you are the BA in charge of helping or making this transition happen. The fish can fly, so you don't need to do anything with the fish. What will be the transition requirement to make this transition happen? Anyone? Please unmute and talk. Tosin. Sorry, what?
Would the solution will require a larger storage space or capacity?
So for some reason, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
So is that Bolore?
Yes, good evening. Can anyone hear me, please?
Yeah, I'm barely hearing you. Yes, but I can hear some of the things you're saying. So I said, what would the transition requirement be?
Okay, so I said the transfer requirement would require a greater storage capacity.
A storage capacity. Was that what you said?
Bigger, yes.
Bigger. Okay. So this is already a requirement, right? A specified solution requirement. So we already have it. We already
Can
have
we
this
say,
bigger. Yes.
sorry, I was gonna say, can we say that since the fish can fly, if we are not sure or if we know like the flight level of the fish, like how close with the current bowl has to be, like the distance between the smaller bowl to the bigger bowl.
So distance. Yes. So that's one transition requirement, right? So we know the current state, which is where we were before. But what this lady is saying, this fish has outgrown this bowl and the fish needs to move to a bigger bowl. Right? So we have the bigger bowl. But in order to make that change occur, right, we need to sort out the distance. So our own part there as a BA, we know the fish can fly, but we don't know how far the fish can fly. Let's assume it's limited. After all, it's not a bird, right? But it can jump. Maybe I shouldn't say fly. It can jump, right? So what we can do to help the fish transition from current state to future state is distance, manage the distance between the bowls. And once the fish successfully jumps into the big bowl, what happens to the current state or the distance? Wale, what happens to the distance requirement?
The distance requirement after the fish jump from the current state to the bigger bowl. Is that the
Yes.
question?
Yes.
I mean, at that point, the distance goes further because we're going to remove that smaller bowl from the bigger bowl.
So there's no more
No
distance
longer
requirement.
required.
Oh yeah, no more requirement.
Yes. So it's no longer a requirement. So if you were writing this for a developer to implement, right, maybe you already know that this fish can only go 5 centimeters in flight or 7 centimeters or whatever distance you know. You will put that here as a requirement, right? The bowl should be for transition 7 centimeters apart. And once the fish makes the jump, this is no longer a requirement. Right? So this is just transition. Okay. So we get the idea of what transition requirement is. It's just a requirement that helps us move from our current state to the future state, but that will no longer be needed after the move is complete. Okay. So generally, you see, we have 4 types of requirements. Your business requirement, which is the high level requirements. Right. From the business requirements, you have stakeholders after collecting the business requirement. Or after strategy analysis phase where you get business requirement, you go to stakeholders to talk to each stakeholder and gather their requirement. From the stakeholder requirement, you start trying to solve the issues the stakeholders have raised, right? So you come up with solution requirements from the issues or opportunities stakeholders have pointed out. You come up with solution requirement. Like our advice in this phase, be ready to work with, of course, the stakeholders that gave you the problem, but people that are also knowledgeable about the solution to ask for advice of what is feasible, because you may not know everything. It may not even be your area of specialty. So be ready to work with people that know about the solution. So the developers or the data analysts, depending on the field you're working in, right? So solution requirement. Now I said there are two types of solution requirements: functional, and this is supposed to be F, and non-functional requirements. Functional requirement tell you what a feature should do or a solution should do. Non-functional requirements tell you how that feature should do it or how that solution should do it. And these two go hand in hand because they are all part of the solution requirement. You can't just do half and leave the other half, then you don't have a solution requirement. Okay. Then there is another type of requirement that is just floating by, which is the transition requirement. Okay. And the job of this requirement is to help you move from the problem state, which is the current state, to the desired future state, the solution state, where the problem has been solved. And after that, it disappears. So a temporary requirement, transition requirement. Okay.
So is it transition requirements? Is it only for the business analyst consumption, or does he have to get approval from a stakeholder?
Oh, so the transition requirement is not just for the business analyst consumption. The transition requirement, depending on the approach you are using, if you are using an approach that is approval laden, like the waterfall traditional approach where you need approval for everything, then yes, you need to write it down and get approval, right? So these are temporary requirements or temporary things you need to put in place for things to work the way you want. So you need approval. If you are in an agile environment, then it may be something you just discuss in a meeting and say, okay, in order for that to happen, we need this and this and this. Right? We need to put this in place. And after we have done what we want to do, we won't need those things anymore. Right? So we may need to rent server space, for example, to reduce the amount, to maybe clean our data, to reduce the amount of data we have and extract only what we need to put on our server. So we need to go rent. That's temporary. After we have cleaned and removed the data we want, we don't need that server space anymore. So that's just a transition requirement. Okay. So transition requirement can even be hiring staff, temporary staff to just come do some things for you so that you can transition. You already have your future state in mind. You know your current state, you know the solution, you know everything, but you need somebody to come maybe edit something quickly, maybe for 1 month or 2 months, so to help you move your solution from where you are to where you want to be, right? To the state where you are using the solution, right? And after that, the person is gone. You don't need that person anymore. So it's not a permanent requirement. It's just to help you transition. So yes, if you are working in an environment where you need to collect permissions like waterfall or traditional environments or hybrid environments, some hybrid environments, then yes. If you're in an agile environment, it's something you discuss and you get verbal approval for. Okay, so let's move on. Now, let's talk about the attributes of good requirements. Good requirements are unambiguous. Unambiguous. They are clear. Unambiguity means clear. But there's a need to re-emphasize it. Unambiguous, meaning anybody that reads them would have one interpretation for that requirement. Right? So you won't have a situations where two people are reading the same requirement and getting different meanings. That's ambiguity. Okay? So good requirements are unambiguous. They are testable. A good requirement should be something we can test. Something we can test to know if it's working or not. A good requirement will be clear. So back to testing. Testing will also help us know when it is done. Right? So because we can test it, we can also tell when the requirement is working. So when it's complete, when it's done, and when it's done. So a good requirement should be clear, concise, precise, no too much unnecessary story. So terse, straight to the point. A good requirement should be correct. Should be correct. Make sure you have the correct requirement. Right? Represent exactly what the stakeholder said they wanted and not something else that the organization will end up expending resources on and won't achieve the goal they want. A good requirement should be understandable. If you write your requirement, if it's an agile environment, it may be what we'll call user story. So if you write your user story or requirement and no one can understand it, then there's a problem. It's not good. It should be feasible. A good requirement should be feasible. So it should be realistic. It should be possible. Okay. A good requirement should be independent. A good requirement should be independent, meaning you should not have your requirements dependent on other requirements. So each requirement should stand alone. A good requirement should be atomic. Atomic meaning it contains only one thing. So you should avoid, the system should have button and, should have this and, right? That means you are talking about 2-3 different things in your requirement. Each requirement should have one thing so that we can test that one thing to know if it's working or not. Atomic. Requirement should be necessary. A good requirement will be necessary. And a good requirement will be implementation free. Oops. Implementation meaning in your requirement, you shouldn't be talking about solution. Remember in strategy analysis when we discussed 5 why, that was the same thing I said, don't talk about the solution yet. Get to the root cause of the problem. Straight in your requirements too, you shouldn't be talking about solution. Requirements are representation of need. That's their definition. Requirements are representation of needs or opportunities that a stakeholder wants to see. So don't talk about the solution in your requirement or implementation, how you will implement the solution. So let me clarify, right? Don't talk about how you will implement the solution in your requirement. Now, understandable. Anyone reading your requirement should understand that this is what you want to happen. So it's advisable that you use the legal word shall. The software shall have this and that. It shall allow people to do this and that, right? To know that that's something that we will do, right? It will have, all other things being equal. So these are the general attributes of good requirements, This list is not exhaustive. There are plenty attributes, everybody coming up with different attributes here and there, right? So Agile helped us pick some of these attributes and use them to form an acronym. This then represents what the Agile people think should be the most important qualities of good requirement. Independent. Because you see, even in this list, some of them sort of embody another one, right? So if you're talking about clarity, well, if it's clear, then shouldn't that mean it's unambiguous, right? So those kind of things. So this acronym INVEST helps us capture the key properties of good requirements based on the Agile framework. Good requirements should be independent. They should not contain any other requirement, and they should not depend on any other requirement for us to understand them. So when we see this requirement, when we see a requirement you have written about something, we should get all the information we need about that thing, about that particular feature, or how that feature should be from that requirement. So it's independent. It should be negotiable. It should be something we can talk about, right, and adjust. It should be valuable. It should be important, right? It should be important, which is what was referred to as necessary here. It should be important. It should be useful to us. It should be useful to the business. It should be estimable. We should be able to measure it. We should be able to measure it, how long it will take. It should be small, so it should be sized appropriately. It should be small, which is what was referred to as concise here under clear. Right? It should be small. It should be testable. And this forms the acronym INVEST. So a good requirement should follow the INVEST principle: independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. Okay. Any question? Okay, so let's switch gears a little. We've talked about requirements and what requirements mean and the types of requirements, and then the properties or the attributes of good requirements, right? So we've talked about just to lay that foundation so we understand what requirements mean. And I've mentioned that requirement elicitation or dealing with requirements will be something you can't escape as a business analyst. The whole job of a business analyst is to elicit requirements and communicate those requirements to people that will implement them. So requirement is in the center, is a business analyst's middle name. Even if someone else has collected requirements, right, you will still need to clarify, either for your own consumption or for the people that will be developing. After all, you're not the developer. So you can't escape requirements. So we understand what requirements mean now. We have a clear conceptualization of what a good requirement will look like. Now it's time to move into how to elicit requirements. How do you elicit requirements? Well, there are 4 parts to it. Every good thing starts with planning. So you have to first prepare for elicitation. After you prepare for elicitation, you conduct the actual elicitation. You document the elicitation results, and you confirm the elicitation resources or results. So you prepare, then you carry out the elicitation, then you document what you are getting, and you confirm it. What is elicitation? Elicitation is gathering, right? Collecting. So you can replace elicitation with collecting, requirement collection, or requirement gathering. Collecting requirements from stakeholders. So first you prepare for it. So let's talk about preparation. Preparing for elicitation involves ensuring that stakeholders have the information they need to provide. So wait, let me rephrase. You want to ensure that stakeholders have the information they need to provide and that they understand the nature of the activities they are going to perform. Preparing means you want to ensure that stakeholders have the information they need to provide. Let me break that down a bit. So at this phase, you haven't started collecting the requirements. You have done your planning phase where you identified your stakeholders. But before you start calling a meeting to ask questions about a product or something, you want to ensure that the people you are even inviting or you are planning to invite, that they have the information that you want to collect from them. Right? So you want to ensure that those people have the information that you want to collect from them. That's the first thing. And that's by reaching out to them, right? And communicating with them that, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Do you have this type of, we need people to come and provide this. So reach out, that first point of contact, maybe email, maybe if it's informal, you can go through a network and reach out to them. We need someone to provide information or who is knowledgeable about this and that. Would you be able to help us in that area? So you want to make sure the people you are inviting have the information that you even want in the first instance. So they don't all leave their different jobs and roles and duties and everything and come sit down in your elicitation ground. Maybe you have provided snacks and they are eating the snack, and then you ask them a question and they say, oh, sorry, we didn't know that was why you wanted us to come. We don't know anything about that. It's so person that knows, and so you have wasted everybody's time. So the first part of preparation is ensuring that they have the information. The second part is that they understand what you are going to be doing in the elicitation process. So if there's anything you plan to do, maybe you want to play a game, maybe you want to show a video, whatever it is, that you inform them beforehand so they don't, there are no surprises. They don't come and be infuriated by something or encounter something they are not prepared for. Okay? So these are the two key parts of preparation. You want to ensure the stakeholders know what you need. Number two, you want to ensure that they understand what you'll be doing in the elicitation session or meeting or workshop. So what are the resources you would need to prepare for elicitation? You need to, of course, know the people and communicate with them. You need to make arrangement for facilities. So would you need a room? If it's going to be virtual, do you have access to Zoom or WebEx or whatever you're using? Then what equipment would you need in order to elicit, collect, or gather? In order to elicit or collect or gather information. Second part, ground rules. You need to set ground rules. You need to already, that should be something you have at the back of your right hand. Anytime you are doing a meeting, right, or a workshop involving several people, there should be ground rules. And you should make those ground rules clear beforehand. Okay, so before the event starts, you should make it clear to everybody what the rules are governing the event, so that the event doesn't start and people are just doing anything and then you start correcting them there. So make it clear. And some ground rules may be, okay, this is how conversation is going to go. I will ask questions, you answer, and this is how the answers will be structured. Every person will get 5 minutes to answer their question, and there is a timekeeper here. Or you may say, we're going to use a pass the ball approach or pass the stick, where if you have the stick, nobody should interrupt whoever has the stick. You can only talk when you have the stick. And when you have the stick, you have the floor, so you can talk. Now, why do you need ground rules? You see, human nature, we have different types of people. Right? Some people are more outgoing, outspoken, loud, garrulous, whatever grammar you want to use to define them. Some other people are very reclusive, gentle, quiet, easily pushed aside or silenced. And you would have these different personalities in a room. You want to give everybody, it's in your best interest to give everybody the chance to talk and contribute, because you see that quiet person may have some key details that you won't be able to get to if you don't give them the chance to talk. So these ground rules will help you control the environment. And as a BA, you want to control your workshops. Right? So if you are using the pass the stick or pass the ball method, then when the ball gets to those gentle people, you say, okay, the ball is with this person now, so this is the person talking. Every other person has to keep quiet. If not, it's only a couple of voices, usually 20% of people will make 80% of the noise. And they'll silence everybody else. So that's one of the reasons why you need ground rules. That's one or the major reason why you need ground rules. Second is control. You want to control your environment. Yeah, so you want orderliness. Then you want to inform and notify every party, everybody that will be involved about the plan. Right? So what is the meeting about? You want to make sure you communicate that to them. Right? So it may be fellow BAs, it may be stakeholders. You want to make sure that they're informed and they know what is going to be happening in your meeting. You also want to make sure that everyone knows the process, right? Especially how they will get feedback, right? During the elicitation process, how will signing off occur? So after elicitation, how will the signing off occur? Right? How will they get to see the results of the elicitation? Right? So you want to communicate all this so that you manage their expectations. Some people will be expecting that immediately after the elicitation, you will inform them of the results. It may not be possible. That may be your first round. You may have several rounds, maybe 20 other rounds of elicitation to do. Right? So, or some people expect that this is the only meeting you are holding. It may not be possible. It may be your first round of elicitation where you are inviting this same group in the future for another round of questioning. Maybe you want to go and process everything they have said, then find out, do some document analysis to verify them, then come back with new lines of question. So you need to inform them of the process of your elicitation. How will you go about it? What would you do? Let them know. So let them know why they are coming. Let them know your ground rules, right? And let them know how the process will go. So after you are prepared for elicitation, the next step is for you to actually conduct the elicitation. Conduct the elicitation. So this just means do the elicitation, actually elicit, right? Elicit the requirements, collect the requirements. So formally, this describes the work performed to understand stakeholder needs and identify potential solutions that meet those needs. So the work to do two things: understand stakeholder needs, identify solutions that meet those needs. Usually this involves two different groups of people. In some cases, it may just be the same group. So like I mentioned when we're talking about types of requirement, I said, when it comes to solution requirement, you are using the stakeholder requirement, which will help you understand what stakeholders need. And sometimes you need to consult with people that are adept at implementing the solutions, people that know how to implement the solution, to advise you on potential solutions that can help you meet those stakeholder needs. Sometimes the stakeholders may be able to guide you on potential solutions. Sometimes you may already even know the potential solutions, right? So, but this is what you are doing during conducting elicitation. You are understanding, you're seeking to understand stakeholder needs, you're collecting their idea of what the problems are. And then another part of it is you'd also want to get an idea of what likely solutions would be or solution approaches. So things you do here will be tracking. This is very important, right? Now, this is where we can talk about scope creep. For some of us that don't know the meaning of scope creep, this is when we have decided that we want to do A, but then people start adding small letter A to it, then somebody adds B, somebody adds big B, somebody adds C, somebody adds big C, somebody even goes as far as adding O. You see, this is what we decided we want to do, A. And A was approved, and we got money for A, and we got resources. So time, we plan time and money for A. This thing is in a hurry. He's more in a hurry than me. So we got money for A, we got time and resources and approval for A. But we allow maybe stakeholders, which may be even our developers, to start adding stuff. To start adding stuff to the A, to the point where it swells up, it goes beyond what has been approved. That's scope creep. So the scope is creeping. Creeping meaning it may be increasing slowly that you won't even notice, right? So it's creeping up on you. The scope is creeping, expanding quietly that you won't even notice. So that's scope creep. So one of the things a BA will do during conduct elicitation is to track the requirements, to make sure that whatever requirement that people are bringing to you or stakeholders are stating or solution experts are mentioning, right, for your solution requirement, they align with the business need. You see, the stakeholder requirements must align with business need. Solution requirements, which again would usually come from working with your developers and looking at stakeholder requirements, those solution requirements must also align with the stakeholder requirement. Solution requirements must align with the stakeholder requirement. When you start having extra solution that does not have anything to do with what the stakeholder has requested, that is scope creep. Okay. Now, this is also a good place to mention gold plating. Gold plating in this sense will now mean, now the stakeholder wants a particular feature. Small letter A will do. This thing. Okay. Small letter A will do. That's what the stakeholder wants, small letter A. But the developer now wants to spend time on this feature and do it to the point where it becomes capital letter A, adds all the extras, Jara, fancy things that the stakeholder does not want. They are fine, they are nice, but they are not the requirement. Like they are just extra. That's gold plating. It's a form of scope creep. Right. So the BA during conducting elicitation will be at the same time tracking the requirements. It's conducting, meaning is carrying out requirement gathering, right? So it's gathering requirement. At the same time as they are giving him all these requirements, the BA should have a section called parking lot, where requirements that are out of scope, you will just write them down there. They are good things, but yes, maybe we'll come back to them some later time when we have more resources. They are not the things that are necessary for now. So you have a parking lot. So you hear BA say, oh, we'll put that in a parking lot, or product people say, we'll put that in the parking lot for now, right? We'll put that in the parking lot. You document those requirements. They are good, but they are not part of what you plan to do now. What you want or what you have gotten approval for is A. So any small A will take out of your resources. When somebody adds a small B, it's also taken out of your resources. Somebody adds a big B. If you allow all this, you will not get enough chance to do your A. You don't have enough resources to do your A. So during conducting elicitation, the BA is tracking. The BA is also using attributes. It's also documenting requirement attributes. As it's collecting requirements, I mentioned this in planning, where we show the attributes of requirement. I said requirement to have an owner, right? Requirement to have a source, requirement to have an author. Those are the attributes of requirement, right? So a BA would document requirement attributes as it's collecting the requirements. And I already mentioned why that is necessary. How do you know who to go back to if you're going to be if you want more clarification about the requirement? Okay. So that's just one of the reasons why you should document attributes. A BA is also during while conducting elicitation, right? Is also tracking participants, looking at time spent, right? Looking at how long they are spending, how much resources they are taking to actually conduct the elicitation. This will be used for future planning. Remember, we talked about lesson learned. For everything a BA is doing, it keeps a record of lesson learned after the event, so that next time they can do better. So they will use metrics. We'll use metrics here to track how many participants attended, how much time did we spend, how many questions were we able to cover, what went wrong, what went right, right? What should we do even more of, and what should we reduce, right? So these are the key things. Collecting requirements, you're immediately tracking if it's aligns with the scope or it's outside. You are keeping record of the attributes of each requirement. So who is the source, who is the owner, value or priority if your organization is so inclined. Metrics, tracking how well the elicitation process is going. Now, let's see an example of how to elicit requirements.
That you have to learn is when you hold on to your history, you do it at the expense of your destiny.
Oh my God. Woo! That hit me. That just hit me.
Did that hit you?
That hit me.
Wow.
This is what I loved about yesterday. My big breakthrough is that everything is based around your story.
Yes.
And that most people are stuck because of the story that they told themselves 10 years ago,
Yeah.
15 years ago, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and you're still living out of that story
Yeah.
instead of allowing your story to evolve.
You can't access the answers as long as you have a story that says it's impossible, or it'll never work, or I've tried everything, or I can't be that. And we all know the power of belief. It can change your biochemistry, just
Yes.
changing a belief system. But we don't really realize that oftentimes the story might even be true. It might be true that you were raped. It might be true that, you went through hell, but that's not why you're not having what you want today.
Yes.
That is horrific, but that's not what today is. That's the reason you're giving, because you're just deathly afraid of what it's going to take to do it today.
So the only thing keeping me from getting what I want is the story I keep telling myself about why it can't happen.
Exactly right.
Here we be in Maya Angelou's bedroom, the big brass bed. Yeah. Talking about life lessons, one of the most important lessons I ever learned from you is when people show you who they are, believe them.
Yes, absolutely. A person says to you, I'm selfish, or I'm mean, or I am unkind,
Or I'm crazy.
or believe them. They know themselves much better than you do.
I remember a long time ago on an Oprah show, you said to a woman, this is a life lesson moment for me. You said to her, you don't have to worry about trusting other people if you can trust yourself.
Yeah.
I never forgot that.
Well, that's what trust is all about. The thing is, you have to invest, but here's the thing. You never invest more than you can afford to lose. If you're in a
that's good.
relationship with somebody, think about this.
Whoa, that's
And-
good. That's a
uh-oh,
tweet.
She's writing down.
Okay.
She's writing
Never
stuff down.
invest more than you can afford to lose.
Yeah.
What's true in the material world is the exact opposite of what's true in the spiritual world. So in the material world, there are only so many pieces of the pie. If I have a piece of the pie, you have less.
Right.
But in the spiritual world, the more I'm able to actualize, and that's what enlightenment is, it's self-actualization, actualizing the love that is in our hearts. The more I self-actualize, to look at your career as such an example, as you actualize the resonance, it's a field of possibility for others.
And that is true for every person.
Every person.
Not just people who have television platforms, but for everybody who has their own arena. Whatever
Every
that
life is a platform.
Sometimes love that.
When people say, I need a platform,
Yes.
you have a body, you have a mind.
Every life is a platform.
Okay. So we just saw an example of how to elicit requirement from a master elicitor. Someone who has made a living eliciting information from people. Oprah Winfrey, right? So I want to ask us, what do you think Oprah is doing well from the video you just watched? What are the characteristics of a good requirement elicitor that you have seen in Oprah? Please unmute and talk.
I think from what I can see from her, she creates the environment and she brings the right people and she asks the right question. She engages them also to get the information and to keep the audience captivated, ready to listen. I think that is it. Yeah.
So why do you think she asks the right questions?
Because she has, let me say, she has planned, she has done research, she has prepared herself.
She has done her homework.
Yeah, she has done her homework.
That's one quality of a good BA that is planning to elicit requirements. You do your homework. Right? Like you said, she creates the environment. She asks questions because she does her homework. Anyone else? What did we notice from Oprah? Taiwo.
That you have to.
Hello, is Taiwo there? Wale, what did you notice from watching this video?
Learn is when you
Is Wale there? Looks like Wale and Taiwo are not available. Okay, it looks like they are not here. Tosin. Hello, Tosin. Sorry, it may be me, but I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, what did you say?
Hello, can you hear me?
No,
Can you hear me?
barely.
Yeah.
Let me try some.
We all can hear him. It's not from you.
Oh, it's not from me, right?
No.
Okay, I thought it was me. I already connected something else. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Tosin, no one can hear you. Okay. Winifred, please, what did you take away from Oprah's elicitation?
Like she was encouraging the people to speak.
Mhm. Okay, so she encourages them to speak. How?
The way she was bringing out the question.
Mhm. Okay, so she brings out the question. Okay.
I feel she was encouraging them to speak
Okay.
by
By
I would just say she encourages the people to speak the way she asks the questions.
So she's highlighting key points when they are talking, which encourages them to speak. Like Andrew said, she has done her homework, so she knows what she wants to say. She knows the area that they are discussing very well.
Right? Yes, like she knows it. You could tell.
And then she confirms what they are saying, right?
Yes.
Then what do you think about the type of questions she's asking? Do you think they are yes or no questions or open-ended questions?
Open-ended.
They're open-ended. Okay. Like you said, she's encouraging them to speak. What about her body language?
I don't know. That was only when you asked the question, what I could say. Yeah, I think I don't know how to explain this. I just feel Oprah knows her job. I feel she looks as if someone that's really trained for it. So she knows what she's asking, and there's a way she goes about it and brings out the answers from the people.
So those are the things we want to tease out, right? We're looking at how she's doing stuff, and we've seen her do it in this clip with different people. So we're trying to see what are the commonalities, what are the things she's doing, right? So that we can learn from them. We can see her body language, for example. She doesn't have a closed body language. She has an open body language where she shows that she's excited. She wants to hear what they're saying, right?
Ready to get the information.
Yeah, she's highlighting their key points. So when they say what, you say, yes, this, that, right? To encourage them to talk more about that. So she's in some way guiding their discussion, right? Encouraging them when they eat a particular key point that she finds interesting. Then, so she's an active listener.
Yes, that's the word, an active listener.
Okay.
I think, can I just add a little bit?
Yes, sure.
And yeah, she's a good listener, and then she's asking probing questions, like follow-up questions. She keep probing them to just get the best out of them. And then when she was speaking to the old lady, Maya Angelou, I believe, she understands that the woman is old, and some of our stakeholders are like that. They don't know how to use the system. Like where I work, insurance company. So most of my dealers, they are not techie. So you need some time. They don't even know how to use Zoom. So you need to be in their space. So she went all the way to her bedroom to go make her comfortable and then elicit requirement from that old lady. And those are the kind of things that I do too. So I just go to those people and then go to their car shop, the dealership, and then I'm able to elicit requirement. So I think that's another thing she did there. She went to the Angelo, went to her bedroom and elicit requirement from her.
Exactly. So very fine point there. Different environments for different stakeholders. When she was talking with TD Jakes, and many of us know TD Jakes, he's a pastor, a bishop, you saw that she moved and stayed with the crowd, left the whole stage for him. He's a pastor. So make him feel as if he's in his church so that it will be flowing. He won't even know why he's flowing the way he's flowing. But she went and turned the whole thing to like a congregation setting where she was also in the crowd and he was on what looked like a pulpit and she was eliciting requirements from him. Maya Angelou, as Shegu said, she's old and she went to lay on the bed with her rather than stressing her with technology or bringing her to her studio. Dr. Phil is more of the academic type. She put a board next to him so he can be writing on the board. Right? So with each stakeholder, she understood the stakeholders. Like you rightly said, Winifred, she knows her job when you understand your assignment. So she paid attention to what will work for each stakeholder and created that environment for them to be themselves so that they can talk, so that they can provide the kind of information she wants. Okay. And she was controlling the energy in the room with her excitement. Oh, yeah, this. She was controlling the energy in the room. There's one other thing she was doing, and I'm waiting for someone to point it out. One other thing she did that was very important when you're eliciting requirements. Abolore, is Abolore there? Is Abolore there? What? Yes, Abolore.
Sorry, I was not here a few minutes ago. What's the question?
Oh, the question. Did you watch the clip? Did you see the clip?
No.
Okay. You won't be able to answer the question then. Wale, is Wale there?
I had a bit of a network issue. What was the question?
Oh, okay. So did you see the clip?
Yeah, I saw a part of it. Yeah.
Okay. So it was opera eliciting requirements. I'm saying, what did you notice about her doing her business of eliciting requirements that you think you would want to share, something that we should take note of?
I like the fact that whenever she hears of a light bulb, like she screams with excitement, and she makes sure to actually repeat what that light bulb is. And also, I noticed that every time she hears that light bulb, she actually make a point of either writing it down or making sure that she actually remembers it to talk about it.
So that's very good. So today it looks like it's Wale was sending cake to. You see, one of the most important things you can do as a BA is taking notes. You see that part where she was writing things down? That's a key characteristic of a good BA. Taking notes. You could hear Dr. Phil say she's writing it down, she's taking notes, right? That's a key quality of a BA. The ability to take notes. The ability to take notes has helped people's career. I heard of a story once of a junior BA that joined that organization. And when there's a meeting with, all this big meeting, strategy meeting, maybe senior or lead BA will take her to the meeting to just be a fly on the wall and listen. And that lady started taking notes. After the meeting, she would take that note, send it to everyone that attended, including the CEO, notes of what was said in the meeting. So obviously, the CEO learned her name. And so in the subsequent meetings, the CEO will say, let's assume her name is Sandra. Okay, so what did we discuss in the previous meeting? Sandra, please tell us, who did we assign this to? Who did we assign that to? And she would say, this, that. And that was how she came into prominence in the company. She became that person that they can trust, rely on. Everybody knew her, at least people at the top. Note-taking. It is important. A very good quality of a BA. Right. So that's one of the most powerful qualities you can have, and which is what Oprah was displaying there. She was taking notes. So it's something she does every time. Take notes. Okay. So we have seen she was an active listener. She suspended her agenda, allowing her people flow, highlighting their key points. She had a positive, energetic body language. She was confirming what was said. She was confirming what was said.
Hold on.
She was asking probing questions. Right? So open-ended questions. She was re-emphasizing the points made. She used different environments for different stakeholders. She took notes. She controlled the energy in the room, and she did her homework. Okay? So this is where we're going to stop tonight, and tomorrow we'll continue about, and we'll discuss the different types of elicitation techniques we have.